One of the most intriguing things that comes with growing into an adult is that you'll somehow, for whatever reason, get these random moments where you'll recall something rather strange from earlier in your life that you can more comprehensively assess now that you have an adult brain, a developed brain, that for whatever reason you just kind of gets your mind thinking about what that could have been or what the hell even happened there. And I have two instances that I just recalled in like the past hour that really stood out to me, and they both are school related, so we're just gonna get right into it. The first one concerns something that happened in first grade. My first grade teacher, of course, in elementary school, you only have one teacher across several different subjects. It's not like middle school and up where you get different teachers for different subjects. But for whatever reason, our teacher, she was absent quite frequently. I don't know if it was maternity leave or something, but one of the days in which she did not show up, which I believe was unrelated to her eventual absence. This weird day in which the excuse that we were given as 7 or so year old kids was that she somehow made her way to the wrong school. The other school in question, I looked up on Google Maps just a moment ago thinking about this story, was 1.6 miles away from the school that she was supposed to head to, right? And that's not including the distances she would have traveled to get there, to commute there by the streets and the roads and whatever. Which now looking back on it, it's so insanely bogus kind of an excuse that was, like as a kid you kind of eat it up. The whole point of that excuse was not to be necessarily foolproof. It was just to kind of get us unconcerned with the truth after that point, and I suppose it did work because it's not like I really caught on and thought about it much more afterwards. But I was just thinking about if I were to go to work and I somehow ended up at the wrong place almost 2 miles off of my intended destination, how big of a mess up that would be, and the probability of that even happening to begin with. Because as far as I'm concerned, when I'm showing up to work, I know where to show up. I know that I have to be at a certain place, at a certain time, on certain days. So the probability of me fumbling that badly is damn near impossible. If there's other things that I fumble in life, that is something I shouldn't mess up. It just seemed so weird to think that that could have actually happened. So it's kind of almost a piece of evidence that you have indeed changed and grown up now that you start asking those questions when you previously wouldn't have. The second story came from my time in middle school. I was in my very last year of middle school, so 8th grade. So I was at this time about 14, 15, between those ages. Our homeroom teacher, who was our instructor for the morning advisory period and the very last period of the day, which for me was language arts, basically English. One morning, I'm just sitting out in my mom's car and waiting for the school day to begin. And I see her calmly just get into her car and leave the lot. It's not like she was peeling out or jetting out of there like she floored it out of the lot. It was just very calmly, casually, and I saw that. I was thinking, oh, maybe she forgot something at home, she's gonna be back within the hour, right? Turns out no, she didn't show back for the remainder of that day, nor did she show up for the remainder of that school year. So for the remainder of that year, our homeroom teacher was just a long-term, I call it long-term because substitutes usually are only there for a couple days. This one we had for the last few months of the year. We basically had a substitute take over the rest of the term year for that class. It was one of the weirdest transition periods that has ever happened in school in general, because there has been at least one case or maybe two cases in which the female teacher in question left because of maternity leave, right? And that's pretty self-evident. You got a kid, you got to tend to the kid, you give time to the kid, give food to the kid, give breast milk, whatever, right? You got to take that time off, and it's very taxing to have a kid anyway. This particular teacher seemed to have disappeared for a reason that I can't really even seem to make sense of to this day. Like, there's been several points ever since where I've thought about this in the last roughly 8 or so years since. None of it really made sense. We found out later that she had made a cross-country move over to St. Louis, Missouri. That kind of a move in the middle of the year, or more like the latter half of the year, it was more like the last third or maybe quarter of the year. Whatever the case, in the middle of the school year, making that kind of a move. And what was even more baffling was thinking about the potential possibilities of what happened leading up to that move. For example, before I saw her even get into her car, what even happened? Had she left the main office telling the administration and faculty that she was essentially donezo right then and there? Like, she laid out her notice before just jetting right on out, literally jetting right on out. Even if she didn't floor out of the lot right there, she had to have taken a damn plane to St. Louis. So it gets you thinking about, you know, certain things like that when you grow up and start having a developed adult brain. But anyway, I looked her up the last time I thought about this incident, and found out that she had taken another educator teaching related position over, you know, in her new location of residence. So, you know, of course, where this person in question went, but you don't exactly know how they ended up there, like the circumstances that led them to that point. Like, was she clamming for this job in the middle of the school year? You already had your sight on this job when you were already preoccupied with one? Or did you just get that job after you lost the previous job? There's a crucial difference between these two stories. There's a lot of questions unanswered about these two stories, but there's different ways in which they're unanswered. The first story was more so, how was this possible? The second story was more so, what the hell happened that led up to this even taking place? I get very curious about sort of the logistics and the things that needed to happen to give way to her move across the country, because I can't imagine that will go well on her resume when she has to clarify, or at least come up with some cover story for her suddenly moving out of state, cross country, and quitting with little notice, what had to have been little notice, in the middle of a term year. I can't imagine that really helped in finding her next job. But at the same time, it's like she ended up getting one anyway, so I guess that's not really much of a concern. I don't know. But anyway, those were two brief anecdotes from earlier in my life that I just started thinking about now that I have an adult brain. I'd be curious to know if, you know, what kind of other stories other people have about this, but those were mine. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, whenever the hell that'll be.